it has made the biggest difference in recovery. And why I'm sharing this is because I used to be a professional athlete. And that was one of the things that we paid great attention to. How can we shorten our recovery times? How can we be at 100% as quickly as possible? And so we tried a lot of things. Nothing that I've ever tried will cut down your recovery time and have you feel energized quicker. There's not even a question.
We have testimonials from a two-time U.S. ultra running champion who basically says the same thing. I can't train hard if I'm still sore from the last training. How do I reduce that soreness? How do I increase that recovery so that I can train hard again and get those benefits of the hard training? This could be the difference between somebody having running as a hobby and somebody having running as a career. It made that much of an impact for him.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another inspired conversation. And we're gonna dive deep into the science of a molecule today that I think is completely undervalued right now. Very few people actually talk and know about it. Those who do and those who use it just know how far ahead of the curve they are. But the broad public has actually not a lot of knowledge about this. We've been talking about it, but today we're going to dive deep into how it's produced and why there's one company in the United States that has the highest quality of this molecule, far beyond anyone else. They're the pioneers here, and they're who we're going to talk to again today. Our dear friends Chris Burris and Miss Patty Greer from C60 Evo. It's great to have you back.
Thank you. Nice to
Hello,
see
John.
you.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you guys in Texas and Colorado. So, how's it been for you? The first year of the year felt like a whole year. This 2 weeks.
It did. I think everybody's being really tested, and what I can say is congratulations, we all survived. This has been 5 to 10 years of absolute horrific challenge if you know what's going on. People that are completely blind to the reality of the war that we are in within America aren't suffering maybe at all. They're just wondering where everything went. But those of us watching, thank God, thank God we take this because it keeps my brain strong and I can tolerate everything that I watch 10 hours a day of news or, I just feel like it seems like that much because it's such a fascinating time we're living in. And I really appreciate that you said how breakthrough C60 Evo is because you're right. Hardly anybody knows about it. It is ahead of its time, even though it's been around since before time. There's a lot of C60 in space, but Chris hasn't figured out a way to grab a net and bring it on down. So he makes it in the lab for 34 years with great integrity in Houston, Texas. And we are the only lab in the world that upgraded the process from industrial grade to ESS 60 elemental safe spheres with 60 carbon atoms for people and pets. That's what we sell. And it is, like you said, there's nothing that compares to it on the market other than the industrial that we sell for tires, batteries, ink, but not for people and pets. So it's really fortunate that we all found it because the older I get, the younger I feel. So it must be doing well.
Well, Chris, you're gonna kind of talk us a little bit through the process of how it's produced. We've never done this before. I think it's fascinating. Before we do, I just wanted to say thank you again to both of you. We got a special Christmas present. This arrived before Christmas. This big bottle, and you can see if you pay close attention, you can see how much is missing. We had the whole family over, and I need to tell you guys this because this is, it was so beautiful to watch. So it was all our kids, our two girls and their husbands and our son and my in-laws, and we were all working out together over the holidays. We would go to hot Pilates together. and everybody was taking the Evo. But my mother-in-law was the greatest example because she hasn't, she hasn't been here in a year, and she hasn't been taking it. So I gave her Evo every time before we went to the workout, and she was just fine. Like tired from the workout, but no sore muscles, although it was a tough workout. And then she forgot, and she went, and the next day she could barely climb the stairs. She said, "I don't understand. Like, what's happening? I wasn't feeling like this all the other times." And I said, "Did you take the Evo?" She said, "No, I forgot." So then I gave her the Evo again before she, went to work out, and it was all good. And so over and over again in our family, this is like it's now religion. Everybody takes it before they go work out if they forget to take it, but everybody remembers. And it has made the biggest difference in recovery. And why I'm sharing this is because I used to be a professional athlete. And that was one of the things that we paid great attention to. How can we shorten our recovery times? How can we be at 100% as quickly as possible? And so we tried a lot of things. I'm not exaggerating. And even if we weren't partnered, I would still say this loudly and proudly. Nothing that I've ever tried will cut down your recovery time and have you feel energized quicker than a double or triple dose of C60 Evo before a tough workout. There's not even a question. So this, if athletes are watching, professional or amateur, this is a game changer when it comes to recovery time. It's my personal opinion and observation. Of course, I'm not making any medical claims. It's a coincidence, but it's a very consistent one. So I wanted to share that with you all.
That is awesome. And I think I've shared, my routine is such that I tend to take the product with coffee, which is after I get to the office, which is after I work out, and I still haven't really done my own test. But we have testimonials from a two-time U.S. ultra running champion who basically says the same thing. When he was initially taking the product, he was taking just one serving. He didn't really notice anything. When he tripled the servings, he was like, wow, this could be the difference between somebody having running as a hobby and somebody having running as a career. It made that much of an impact for him. And that's what you're talking about. As a professional athlete, I can't train hard if I'm still sore from the last training. How do I reduce that soreness? How do I increase that recovery? So that I can train hard again and get those benefits of the hard training. I do have one slide which I think kind of explains what's going on. So this is a little bit geeky, but this is the BOSS theory. So the BOSS theory stands for buffering oxidative stress system. You can see up here on the upper left, you've got healthy mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. It produces, there's in every cell in your body, there's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria, except for your blood cells, which have 0, and your brain and neurons, which have 2 million. Like any energy source, there's a negative byproduct. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. I like to picture these like little bumper cars. Everything if they're left to their own devices, everything they run around and bump into causes stress, causes oxidative damage, and internal to the mitochondria, when it's at a healthy state, you have melatonin and glutathione to manage those reactive oxygen species. I like to pause here. Melatonin is the sleep hormone. One of our most consistent testimonials is related to sleep. So you see here, healthy mitochondria, it's got reactive oxygen species. They're being managed by melatonin and glutathione. Over on the right, you've got this gray stressed mitochondria. First, how do you stress mitochondria? I would suggest that a hot Pilates workout would stress your mitochondria. And normally, if you're in this, or even the tough training that you are doing as a professional athlete, that stressed mitochondria now starts to produce more reactive oxygen species than can be managed by the internal glutathione. And you can even see here, there's an escape path through the outside of the mitochondria. So again, those can, if they're left to their own devices, can run around, and everything they smack into, they cause rust, oxidative stress, oxidative damage. And that's where this ESS60 molecule comes in. It holds on to those negatively charged reactive oxygen species so that they can't do any damage. And then when it So you see that here in the bottom, you've got those 6 negatively charged particles. Now, just some supporting research behind this. We know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. So we know it's there. And then we know from way back in the 90s, it can hold up to 6 of these negatively charged particles. So here you see it's doing its job as the boss molecule, holding on to those reactive oxygen species. And then actually it just holds on to them until that mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and replenish the melatonin and then manage those appropriately. And again, that's why we say the ESS60 molecule is the boss. The kind of summary of this is you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you will have systemic benefits. You'll have what we have, which are head-to-toe testimonials.
And just to sort of wrap up the athletic side of things and why I really am pointing it out, if you're a competing athlete, it isn't just that you're trying to find something that helps you recover faster. You have to find something that, you know, won't get you disqualified or on a doping list, because there's a lot of substances that are not allowed, of course. And then you also want to really make sure that you don't put stuff in your body that's going to have side effects, negative side effects in other ways. So this is for me a big one. This is 2 ingredients. ESS60 is 2 ingredients. There is absolutely no problems, and there are no known side effects to those 2 ingredients. This is where we get into the production process and what's in there and how it's made. Chris, can you run us through it? I love that you get to geek out on this today,
Yeah.
because my geek side gets happy today. So
All right. Well,
how's the ESS60 produced?
Yeah, I'm full on geek out mode, and I'm really enjoying this. So I've got this slide. This is kind of a rough schematic of how you manufacture what is called fullerenes. And fullerenes is the collection of molecules associated with carbon-60. I think the next slide here kind of shows the different fullerenes. You've got carbon-60, carbon-70, a whole bunch of higher fullerenes. Carbon-60, this really kind of awesomely shaped molecule, is the most abundant of the fullerenes. So to make fullerenes, you actually have to vaporize graphite rods at the temperature of the sun. So you can see in this image, that we've got 2 graphite rods. They're being forced towards each other. And there is actually a plasma between these 2 rods that is the temperature of the sun. Why do you need the temperature of the sun? Well, it turns out graphite is one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. And so you do need temperatures of the sun. One of the things that's really interesting, and I know Patty's gonna hop on this kind of as I wrap up, but as you're forcing these together and you've got this plasma that is vaporizing the graphite, if you don't rotate these, that graphite, those planes will slowly shift. And what will happen is you'll end up in this weird askewed gap between the 2 rods, and that'll move that gap out of the center. Why is it important that it's in the center? Well, have I mentioned it's the temperature of the sun? So you need some gap between where that's occurring and the walls of the chamber. And you can even notice here that those walls are water cooled. So this entire chamber has 2 layers of metal, and there's water cooling in between those. Not only that, even these arms on the exterior are vapour cooled arms because there is so much heat going on here. Now, in order to prevent that askewing, that vaporization and depositing that causes a skewed angle, if you were to rotate it the same way, you rotate these rods. If you rotate it the same way, the same thing would happen, right? Because one point on the tip of one rod is always at the same spot as the tip on the other rod. So what you have to do is you actually have to rotate them in opposite directions to keep that parallel surface so that they're continually vaporizing. And Patty, I don't know if you want to jump in now or you want me to kind of wrap things up.
You didn't say counter rotating, so you didn't trigger my excitement.
Okay, so there's a plasma, and these graphite rods need to rotate in opposite directions. They need to be counter rotating. And interestingly, kind of in a presentation we did last week, this really triggered something for Patty. I think maybe good time for you to talk about that.
Yes,
I'll take this off for a moment here.
okay. As you know, I made 8 crop circle movies, and this was my final one. Won a couple of big awards at the International UFO Congress. which was really exciting, except it got me in a lot of trouble because people wanted me to pass away quickly. So I had a couple of terrible attacks after my final speech and gig and film showing, and I left the field of ufology because it was clearly no longer a friendly place. It was infiltrated. They didn't want the good stuff getting out. So I left the field, but I was so wounded, and then I didn't die. So if somebody poisoned me with uranium, and I got on ESS 60. I started taking it, and today I'm 5 years past all that, 7 years past the other attack. And I've survived graciously and gratefully because of this product. But when I heard Chris say, we move these graphite rods together and they're counter rotating and spinning the plasma fields, I went, wait, that's how crop circles happen. So, interestingly enough, the lady I made my final film with that gave us all the science, we did a show with her an hour ago, Penny Kelly. And I wanted to see her reaction. But ultimately, what we proved after 100 crop circle visits and 8 films was the crop circles are coming out of the earth in pairs of counter rotating spinning vortices of plasma. And when they get to a certain velocity, speed, what a human eye will see is a ball of light. So in my films, which I have quite a few of, the balls of light are all we see, and they slowly move over the field and it goes down in seconds. But the science is that they are counter rotating vortices of spinning plasma. And they were brought up from inside the earth with the intention of creating a sacred geometric mandala, or a picture of a thunderbird or a hummingbird or an orthoceras sea creature. Whatever the message is, it is brought with the intention of creating that image in a field of wheat or corn, and it's delivered by these spinning vortices of plasma. So when I realized, wait a minute, how could they both be using the same basic science? I talked to Penny Kelly, and she had mentioned that when you rotate plasma in a certain direction with intention, you can create matter. You can create all kinds of things because everything's plasma and everything is created with our thoughts, feelings, words, actions. But on the other side, if you devolve or you counter the spin of the plasma with bad intention, you can destroy matter or break down matter. And that's what I think is happening with the directed energy weapons. I was attacked with one, and my whole from the waist down was turned to jello. I was like, it was the strangest thing. And it wounded me pretty badly to hit the floor at an airport being like a pool of jello. It was very strange. But now that I know about these theories, these scientific theories, I think it's possible, as Chris is describing, when they shifted the spin or they made it all go in one direction, it kind of tilted this way. Then they took it the other direction, it kind of tilted that way. But when they spun in counter rotating vortices of spinning fields of plasma, it was perfect. Well, gosh, spaceships seem to work that way also, and free energy devices also are spinning plasma fields, and zero point and crop circles, and now ESS 60. So I'm blown away that the same basic science creating all these miracles of advanced technology, frankly, ancient technology. Crop circles have probably been happening a lot more for hundreds of years. As I have not been in a spacecraft, so I don't know, but I did film a bunch of free energy inventors, and they're using spinning opposite rotating vortices of plasma. So I'm fascinated by all this, that it's kind of, for me, it says, oh, wow, this is why I'm doing this now, because it's to teach us all to kind of retrain our brains to see the good patterns of creation, and being conscious of moving plasma through the field of reality with intention of doing good is making ESS 60. That's just one more point that makes me love this product, is that it's real science.
Same here, and honestly, when you just connected all the dots, it makes beautiful sense. Like, especially with everything that we've learned so far about this molecule, Chris. What happens in the next stage? What happens after the, opposite rotating, counter rotating takes place, and what happens with the molecule?
If you go back to that drawing, if it were only that simple to rotate them in opposite directions and vaporize them, which is already a massive task that involves the temperature of the sun, it's even harder than that, right? So a couple things about this vaporization: it must occur in the absence of oxygen, right? So you'll notice this vacuum pump down here. Um, and so we'll use that to vacuum all the air that's in the chamber out, including any of the air that gases in that will actually inculcate into the graphite rods. So you actually have to degas the graphite rods. Then you backfill them with helium gas. That's a nice inert gas in this application. But just to make sure you get rid of all the oxygen, we've done this a number of times, so we know we have to vacuum it all out again to make sure you get rid of all the oxygen, and then backfill with the helium. Now, when you're backfilling with the helium, you don't take it to ambient pressure. You actually take it to below ambient pressure, so just under ambient pressure. So at a very slight vacuum is when it produces the most fullerenes. So this is a challenging, fun operation. I also want to point out there's a window here at the top. So you can watch this reaction occurring. If you don't have welder's goggles over that window, you will burn out your retina. If you let that light shine on your skin, you will get a sunburn because it is the local temperature of the sun. And we've done all of this kind of reactor and whatever. It's really important to point out, even if anyone in your audience has never tried our product, they have been exposed to this ESS60 molecule. And the reason I can say that confidently is if you collect the soot from a candle flame, and you would probably do that by taking a cold steel plate, putting it over a candle flame, and collecting that deep, dark soot. That deep, dark soot has parts per million or parts per billion of the ESS60 molecule. And so everyone's been exposed to it. It is a naturally occurring molecule. And it's such a simple molecule that it doesn't matter if you collect it from the soot of a candle, from this plasma arc, from out in space. It is the exact same simple molecule. Now, from this vaporized graphite, we've created this soot. And the way I like to describe this soot, other than impressively filthy, is if you took a pile of this soot in your hand, it would be very similar to taking a pile of ink toner or copier toner. If you were to drop it, not much would hit the ground because it's so light and fluffy. It's just a dirty disaster, like all the time. Really tough to work with. Not only that, 90% of that soot is amorphic graphite or amorphic carbon garbage, right? So 90% of it is not even useful. You have to isolate that 10%. Now, how do you separate out that 10%? The best analogy that I like to give is if you took some sugar and some sand, how would you separate those? You would add water and the sugar would dissolve in the water. You would filter it and the sand would stay on top of the filter, and the the sugar would go through the filter in solution with the water. Then you would boil off the water, and now you would have those sugar crystals. Same thing with here. We take that fullerenic soot, we dissolve it in a polar solvent, you filter it, and on top of that filter, you've got that 90% of amorphic carbon garbage, and then you have the fullerenes going through in solution. Just like the water, you would boil off that solution, and now you're left with, this is a picture here. We call this extract, which is like fullerenic extract. So that's what that is. Now, that fullerene extract is comprised of multiple fullerenes, carbon 60, carbon 70, carbon 74 on up. So the next step is, how do we separate these from each other? It may turn out that carbon 70 and the higher fullerenes are safe for you. It may turn out that they're actually good for you. At this point, there's no toxicity studies on those. I don't know about you. I have a general policy. If we don't know the toxicity of something, I don't like to consume it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd rather
Right?
not.
So we want to isolate this C60. The way we do this, and by the way, I'm going to kind of fast forward through here, is, well, first off, how do we test it? So when we look at that powder, how do we know how much is C60, how much is C70? This is Robert and I in our chromatography lab. this equipment here is called an HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography. You can see this solution, it's a little bit purple. When you take a pure ESS60 and you dissolve it in a fairly clear liquid, it turns this beautiful purple color. When it's dissolved in olive oil, because olive oil tends to have like a greenish hue, it just kind of turns a murky color, not a beautiful purple color. Now, this HPLC, we're collecting a sample here, we inject it into the HPLC. It runs through that injection through this column. There's a better picture of the column here. That's an HPLC column, a chromatography column. And what it does is it separates the different fractions of what you're injecting based on molecular weight. So things with lower weight go through faster. So carbon 60 goes through the fastest, and then you have carbon 70. From this, you end up with kind of a graph that looks kind of like this. This is actually a mass spec, but it kind of looks like this, where you've got the peaks showing you what the concentrations of the different molecules are in that particular solution. Now, that's how we test it, but it's also how we separate it. So obviously, we don't use that little tiny chromatography column. We use a much bigger industrial column, and we run lots of the solution through that industrial column. And then when we collect that carbon 60 fraction, we boil off that solvent, and then we have a couple of proprietary processes to convert that from industrial C60 into the ESS60 that's safe for people and pets. Yeah, that's, I don't know if you have any questions at this point, because
I
there's
do.
more to the story.
I do. Up until till that point, what is the time frame for production?
Yeah. So it depends. You can, and it also depends on volume. So you can get about 250 to 400 grams out of a run. So that's actually with this piece, with this piece of equipment.
Mhm.
We're what we designed, what Robert and I designed back in 1991. That design is obviously new equipment, but that design is still the best manufacturing process for manufacturing this. So you get a fairly small amount of it. Remember, 90% of it is garbage. Now you've got 10% of that. You can process that down and filter it and get it to this fullerene extract in a day. And then it'll take 2 more days to get it down to a pure enough form of carbon 60 that's worth, that we're able to convert into the ESS 60. Yeah, that's the answer.
That is before the entire process with the high quality olive oil starts.
Yep.
This is how you actually extract and isolate the C60. So this is a big process. This is also, it's timely and costly. I mean, and I think it's important to understand that that this takes an incredible amount of sophisticated technology to make that happen.
Yes. And honestly, if we weren't involved in this space, right? We're the oldest and longest manufacturers of this molecule and distributors of this molecule on the planet. If that weren't true, and Patty, approached us and said, "Hey, we should do a supplement, and it would be a great business to deliver value to people," I would be like, "We probably shouldn't do this." Like
Well,
this.
as a if you're a businessman, entrepreneur, you look at input, output, you go, phew, there's a lot of input, here. It's a big load of input. Um, would it, side question before we move on, would this make sense if you didn't have the industrial side of things for you? Would that, I mean, because it seems like, would it still make sense?
Yeah, I think it would. But what's interesting is, without the industrial side, I don't think there would be a
Yeah,
supplement side,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
right?
It was
Right.
pure accident, wasn't it, actually?
Yeah, they thought it would be toxic. They thought, hey, this is an amazing molecule. It does all these great industrial applications really well. People are going to be working with it on a regular basis for various reasons. We think it might be toxic. Let's throw it in a toxicity study. And whoa, instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. And so now it's kind of magically in this health and wellness space.
Yeah, this is where after everything I've studied, I've said this before. I think we're just at the beginning. We're literally in the beginning of understanding what this can do. Will potentially do. It's like unlocking something. But please let it. What happens from there? Now you've done this. Now you've isolated the C60. What happens then?
So we isolate that C60. We then go through our proprietary processes to turn it into ESS60. And now, if you had a pile of that ESS60, it'd be just a black powder. No surprise there. It's carbon, and it would be crystals, maybe like sugar crystals or salt crystals. And you could consume it if it was ESS60, not carbon 60. I wouldn't recommend that. If it's ESS60, you could consume it, but it's not water soluble. So you would just excrete it out. It is oil soluble, so we end up dissolving it in the most popular oil. The recommended oil is olive oil. And what that does is break down those crystals into individual molecules of ESS60. Now it's basically infinitely more bioavailable. And how do we do that process? Well, I'll actually go back and talk. The first way that process was done, even in the original study, was in an Erlenmeyer flask, right? So it's a small flask. They took olive oil, they took the ESS60 molecule, they mixed it for 2 weeks, tracking the concentration, tracking to see if any more of the ESS60 molecule was dissolving. At the 2 week mark, it was fully saturated. And so they did their experiment. The rats lived 90% longer. Well, we started manufacturing in actually 1 liter Erlenmeyer flasks. And then as we needed to produce more, we shifted to this. Now, this may look familiar to some people who like to make beer. This may look like a beer still because it is. So as we were going from an Erlenmeyer flask to a stainless steel chamber, this was the most cost-effective way. You can see we actually modified it so we could get our propellers in it so we could do some serious mixing. Now, here's where things get interesting because we tested 22 of the products in the what I would call industrial carbon 60 space, and all of them were woefully low in concentration, except for one, and of course ours. And why were they woefully low in concentration? I'm a pretty altruistic person. I try not to believe that people are doing things on purpose, but I do believe that they should do things better. If you remember, in that Erlenmeyer flask, they mixed it for 2 weeks. I believe these other manufacturers are mixing it for 2 weeks and just assuming they've saturated the concentration. We found out that the fluid, and by the way, it's not a big surprise that the fluid dynamics of this vessel is very different than the fluid dynamics in these vessels, right? And so what we found is there's less exposure of unsaturated oil to the actual powder in these chambers. And so because we have the HPLC, because we can, anytime we want to pull a sample, we just pull a sample, walk across the hall, inject it, and we have an answer within like 20 minutes. Anybody else who doesn't have the HPLC, let alone the right chromatography column, the technology on how to do it, what light waves to use as they're using the HPLC, they actually have to stop production, pull a sample, ship it off, wait 3 days for that result to come back. So they just don't do that. And they don't know that you've got to mix it for 3 weeks. We know because we're able to test it so frequently. So now we mix it for 3 weeks. Now, this is also a problem because if on it, you can imagine on anything that you're going to put olive oil in, there's going to be this top that is a gas, right? It's going to be air. Well, that air has oxygen in. We're mixing at a high rate, so there's a big vortex. So you would actually be folding in that oxygen into that olive oil. This is not a good thing. So you'll see this blue tube here, and actually there's a better shot here. This blue tube is continuously feeding nitrogen into the chamber to displace the air, to displace the oxygen, nitrogen, and inert gas. No problem with it getting folded into the olive oil. And you can actually see here is a flow meter. That's Robert doing some QA/QC. So now we've got a backfilled nitrogen system that runs for 3 weeks. Finally, we're at a product that we can stick in a bottle.
So total production time around 4 weeks ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's and during those 4 weeks, I mean, if you can share, what kind of volume can you produce in those 4 weeks? Like give
Um,
or take.
I'll share it this way. So when we were, and by the way, this flask is a little small. We were using, this is a quarter of a liter, right?
Mhm.
We were doing full 1 liter flasks, and we were probably operating like 3 at a time in the early days. when we shifted into this location, by the way, this is a GMP facility. That stands for Good Manufacturing Practices.
Mhm.
It's an FDA designation. We have that certification. By the way, we were always doing GMP because we're a lab that sells to research institutions around the world. Like, they can test what we ship them. If we don't ship them what they promise, then they're going to let us know. So when we were shifting into this location, I calculated the space and these smaller beer stills, and we were able to 10x our production that was already happening. Then the team started buying these 100 liter vessels, and so we have ample production, right? Like, honestly, I don't know it off the top of my head. We're not even close to maxing out production.
But a production time, can we take off the slides, Chris?
Take them off? Yeah.
Yeah. So just so we see a little bit, bigger Chris, bigger Miss Patty. 4 weeks is quite the time. That's quite a production time for a supplement, and many others are not that kind of. But I'm impressed, having listening to you, because I can tell how excited you are about the process, because you designed it. That's what people need to understand. Like, you were there from the pioneering days of this molecule. You designed this whole thing. You perfected it. You keep perfecting it. You keep putting research into it. This is your baby. And anytime when somebody talks about their baby, you can just tell the excitement and the joy, and now it's helping people in ways that you couldn't anticipate back then. And I think it's like, it's actually one of those stories that people will tell in the future enthusiastically. That'll be one of those stories that'll be told. As always, the pioneers usually, they pave the way, and then in the future it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This is usually how it goes. Future is unfolding faster. And Miss Patty, you are coming from the spiritual side of things, from the metaphysical side of things. This is where you and ufology and all of that, and it all connects like full circle moments. It's beautiful. So please let us know. Now that people know more about the science, uh, how can they give it a try if they haven't yet, and get excited about the effects of it?
Well, I love that you said you can feel it quickly, because that's how you know a good remedy. All the supplements that I used to buy only a few now. You take them, but you don't really notice a difference. So it's really nice when you do, which you do with C60 Evo. Our website and your landing page is C60EVO, like evolution.com/inspired channel. And when you go to that page, Chris, do you want to pull that up?
Oh, I think, yeah.
We can
Oops,
pull.
I just turned it off. Let me turn it back on.
So, we have top selling items to make it easy for people. The olive oil is a clear winner. It's the one that was delivered to that longevity test. And I will say that the rats lived 90% longer and died without any tumors. This was a historic test. And 90% life extension is the longest longevity results in history on lab animals. So, not to be taken lightly. You can get special offers on if you buy two, if you buy three, if you buy six, you'll get a special deal. And we do, after lots of research, understand that it takes 3 months to fully activate your body to become really noticeably C60 efficient. So, better sleep, more mental focus, a lot more energy, longevity ultimately. And we also make it for pets because, needless to say, everybody loves their pets. And so, if you want your pet to live longer, which most people do, it's the same thing. It's this wonderful olive oil with a little bit of bacon flavor for dogs and a little bit of salmon flavor for cats. Um, Chris is saying most popular is the olive oil, of course. And the reason we're doing 6 packs as a suggestion is 3 for you to get full saturation in your body, and then 3 to give to your favorite friends and family. Because, like you said, John, your family is all loving the benefits and now realizing that you can have a hardcore workout and then walk out of there feeling just fine.
I tell
So
you where this sits. We have this little side kitchen, like a small little kitchen where the coffee machine is. This sits next to the coffee machine. So, I set that big bottle there and I come back a week later and it's like, holy guacamole. It's like this. Somebody's been sipping on this, but everybody was happy and healthy. So, more power to them.
well, you were always jealous of my big bottles, so I figured, ho, 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 you deserve
Thank
one.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, we love it. So a lot of people will say, "What do you recommend as your starter?" How can I get started on Evo? And again, the two top items are the olive oil, fantastic for energy, mental focus, and our facial serum, which I'm pretty sure we have as many men customers as lady customers that love this advanced facial serum because it's all natural. It's got a base of chia seed oil because I used a formulator that's lived on raw foods her whole life and she's in her 70s. So
That's my favorite package, by the way. Just so you know, those two are like, I don't go anywhere without that combo.
I don't either. And even in my RV, it's like, oh, pack, pack, pack. Don't forget the Evo and the face serum. And I always have the lip balms also. But the product is so good that we make it from head to toe, like um, hair serum, skin serum, body creams, lip balms, but the main ones that sell like crazy are the edible oils because people feel the difference. And when people start saying, "My God, what are you doing? Your skin looks great," it's usually the ESS 60 advanced facial serum. Well, the guys at the lab were kind of making fun of me because I was like, "Oh, we got to do all these, you know, unisexual products," I said, and they're like, "We're a bunch of guys, like face serum, please." And sure enough, all of them look fabulously younger. Chris gets carded now and then, I imagine, which beats the senior club that he used to be invited to. Oh, that was rude. Anyway, they called me, and Chris goes, "Okay, you win. Facial serum totally works. The guys and I have been experimenting in the lab with this peptide that's got 30 years of research, fabulous for skin and hair and everything else. So we brought this two-part serum, which is the C60 Evo Advanced. I'm sorry, C60 Evo Youth Renew Duo. And you've got two bottles, and the reason is we didn't want to use chemicals and emulsifiers. So we ask you to freshly activate in the palm of your hand one pump of the tall blue bottle, which is the peptides, and it's blue in your palm, and you'll go, yeah, great color. And then you put a couple of drops per pump of the peptide. You do the oil and mix it in your hand, freshly activate, put it on your skin, and I think that you will be quite amazed at the benefits. And of course, it's loaded with the ESS 60 magical molecule. We do offer subscriptions, which saves you money every month. And you can sign up, then you won't have to think twice. And if you don't love it, which rarely happens, you can cancel it anytime with an email or a phone call. They don't even ask questions. But we find that we are up to 70% resubscribes. And that right there is a testimonial that when people start, they just don't drop it. And if you want to know more than what Chris and I and Jean has to say, go to our testimonials on the landing page, and it is endless results. People mention all kinds of maladies that they've dealt with for years. 2 weeks on Evo, everything changed. So we're really proud. We get thank you letters all the time. I have tremendous fun with it because the guys at the lab let me be generous with samples. So I give it to people and friends. And then I'm always kind of snooping at the sales. 1 to 2 days, they always order. So it's not that I do it as a fishing adventure. I want to help my friends and family, but they all choose to stay on the product. And the facial serum, I do want to mention the guys at the lab first made fun of me, and then they came up with this gorgeous delivery box. Like, how beautiful is this? Revive, replenish, rejuvenate. Um, Really lovely gift. So here comes Valentine's Day in a month. A lovely suggestion. The starter set, the edible oil and the facial serum rocks. Or you can go all the way into the two-part with the peptides, but also take a look at the bottom of the page, go to our entire store to see all the other products, such as the dog and cat formula. And I know you thought you were going to have to put your beautiful dog to sleep, and 2 years later, still cooking with Evo. So,
He was until recently, yes. So recently he did we did. I shared it in our last show, but definitely a surprising and very, very appreciated 2 years that we had with him. So thank you for that. I also wanted to say to our viewers, please let us know in the comments, your experience. And for those maybe who have taken it a little longer, a few months and onward, that's really where it starts to kick in more and more and more. I always say the longer you go, the greater the effects tend to be. But and I wanted to say I would be curious for those of you who are athletic, who work out a lot, give it a try where you double. And I would say it's not medical advice, but I would triple the doses before a workout. Um, and try it both ways, without it and with it, right? So you really have a good comparison. And if you can, or share it with your athlete spouse, friends, whatever, I would love to get more feedback on that because so far, everybody that we tried this with, same experience. Would just love to hear it because I honestly think it could be a game changer. If this makes it to the athletic circles, and that's just on athletics, for athletes. But it was a big observation. So yeah, that's from my end.
that's a big one. Another one that I really like is for older people, and I'm in my 70s. My mom is 96. She's going to be 97 in a couple months. She's
That's
outlived
incredible.
she's outlived all of her friends, but her brain is still on fire because she takes C60 Evo every day. And she remembers things from when I was 12, and I test her every now and then, but she's like, quit it. She's so present. It's kind of scary. So we're going to all go out and see her because, my God, 97 any day. It's like, but yeah, the longevity is no fakey, and the helping the mental focus and memory for older people, really impressive. My mom is a prime example. I'm in my 70s, and my memory is better than it's been in ages. And I take this every day, so I don't skip a day. Some people, they think, oh, it's so expensive, but it's like, what's your health worth? It's $82 a month for radiant health and great improvement in energy, mental focus, and better sleep. Small price, but again, it's been a rough bunch of years for a lot of people. And believe me, we feel for the people that are having a hard financial time. But when you have something this strong and effective, you don't have to spend money on all the health issues like you used to once you get on this. So ultimately, you save a ton of money, energy, and especially for pets. My God, what they charge at the vet. And if you
Unbelievable. If people
unbelievable.
spend way more on their pet's health than they do on their own, that's how how loving most people are. So I encourage everyone to hop over to c60evo.com/inspired channel. Please share this with a friend. Share this with someone in your family so they can watch it and get the science behind it. Thank you, Chris, for geeking out so beautifully. It was a joy to see this whole thing. I really enjoyed it. Miss Patty, of course, thank you so much, both of you, for everything you do. I look forward to our next conversation. And Inspire Tribe, we love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon.